His Excellency, Mr. Stephenson King, Prime Minister of St. Lucia. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, Your Excellencies, Presidents, Prime Ministers, and Head of Delegation, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please permit me, first of all, to express profound gratitude to the government and people of the Kingdom of Denmark for the warm welcome extended to my delegation and myself. Permit me also to congratulate your government for successfully taking on the challenge of hosting such a huge and logistically complex and truly momentous international event. Mr. President, St. Lucia came to this 15th Conference of Parties to the Convention and 5th meeting of parties to the Kyoto Protocol in search of one thing: an ambitious, legally binding outcome to these negotiations, one that will safeguard our collective future in the face of advancing climate change. Otherwise, we will all be affected. Prior to leaving St. Lucia a few days ago, I heard about the demonstrations taking place around the world, and in particularly in the streets of Copenhagen. I also learned that the negotiations here in this center had entered choppy waters, and that at one time, work had come to a virtual standstill. These developments reminded me of two facts. Firstly, that these climate change negotiations on the way here are delicate and challenging. And secondly, that the attention of the entire world is riveted on Copenhagen, all in the hope of a successful outcome. Despite all of this, despite the current state of negotiations, and despite the fact that some countries like Taiwan are left out of this process, I remain hopeful of a successful outcome. This is because I am convinced in my mind and in my heart that we truly have no real choice but to reach agreement. Mr. President, St. Lucia is a proud member of the Caribbean community CARICOM and the Alliance of Small Island States, AOSIS, and the fundamental position of CARICOM and AOSIS is well known. Our mantra of 1.5 to stay alive is not merely a political slogan, but one grounded in scientific reality. Some have asked, why do we stick to this negotiating position when others are holding on to a 2-degree target? Mr. President, in life and diplomacy, many things are negotiable, but the survival of our island homes is not. The lives of our people are not, and will never be negotiable with whatever the inducement. Mr. President, St. Lucia is the CARICOM lead speaker on sustainable development. I would therefore like to underscore the fact that the entire Caribbean is highly vulnerable to the effects and impacts of climate change. The latest scientific and economic studies have warned us to expect temperature increases well above the global average, a decline in overall precipitation of 20 to 30%, and a significant increase in the frequency of Category 4 and 5 hurricanes to peak in the next decade. We have also been advised to expect the inundation of the land around 14 of 50 of our seaports and the displacement of hundreds of thousands of people living on the coast due to sea level rise. Mr. President, until 2005, my country, St. Lucia, was listed among the top 4 dive destinations in the world. However, In that year, unprecedentedly high and sustained sea surface temperatures in the Caribbean Sea resulted in the bleaching of many of our coral reefs. To date, many of these reefs have failed to recover, and this, in addition to jeopardizing the livelihood of many fishers and their families, has resulted in St. Lucia slipping well out of the top 10 dive destinations, with a corresponding negative impact on the vital tourism sector. And while on the subject of tourism, Mr. President, please permit me to mention the deleterious effects of a substantial carbon tax unilaterally imposed on airline tickets to the Caribbean by a certain friendly country. Mr. President, we, the presidents, prime ministers, ministers, and other leaders gathered here have to ask ourselves individually and collectively some hard questions. Have we come to Copenhagen to preside over the greatest political failure and environmental catastrophe in history, or have we come here with a genuine determination to save the planet? Are we trying to postpone or evade the responsibility and cost of tackling climate change? Are we trying to negotiate the most expedient deal based purely on selfish and short-term national interests? If we are here purely for the purpose of expediency, then let us not waste any more time. Let us simply depart Copenhagen and hope that tomorrow and the day after, we will be able to look the people of the Bahamas, Tuvalu, and the Maldives in the eye, even as they contemplate the rising seas and explain the reason for our failure to act. Let us also pray that our dreams will not be filled with the voices of the suffering, the dying and the displaced, the accusing voices of those, present and future, whose lives and future have been destroyed or rendered wretched by climate change and by our failure to act appropriately. However, if we are here for the right reason, then let us erase the artificial lines of territorial sovereignty that we have drawn upon the surface of the planet and work towards the only outcome that will be acceptable to the billions of people that we represent, a pact to collectively, equitably, and effectively address climate change. This, Mr. President, for some of us, requires a huge leap of faith. We must, therefore, all be prepared to negotiate in good faith. Yes, we will be breaking new ground, and there will be moments of fear. However, at these times, we must remember that courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what you are afraid to do. It is having the power to let go of the familiar and forge ahead into new territory. There is an ancient story about a wise man who was frequently tested by the young men of the city. They would come to him with a bird cupped in someone's hands and would ask him if the bird was alive or dead. If he said it was alive, they would squeeze it to death and drop it at his feet. If he said it was dead, they would simply release it and let it fly away. One day, they brought the entire village to the cave where the wise man lived and posed him the usual question in the hope of humiliating him. This time, to their surprise, he simply responded, "The life of this bird is in your hands." Mr. President, the message I leave with us all is therefore clear. The future of our planet and its inhabitants is in our hands. Let us make this famous city truly unforgettable. Let us seal the deal now. I thank you.